Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club, the show that harmonizes the rhythm of hip hop with the magic of movies. Today, we're discussing Dope, an adventurous comedy drama with a nostalgic 90s hip hop laced soundtrack. We're three old heads who put their old heads together to vibe on these films for you. I'm Dino Wright, podcaster, filmmaker, longtime hip hop fan, and I met Pharrell Williams at Pat Steaks in Philly before an NERD show in 2002. He was really nice.
I'm JB, 80s and 90s nostalgia junkie, longtime hip hop fan, and I once introduced myself as Imp the Dimp, the ladies' pimp, at a corporate training session to lighten the mood in the room. It worked. It broke the ice.
Well, I'm Boogie, a DJ, a longtime hip hop fan, and I just won tickets to Tony Touch, the Peacemaker concert going on June 7th at Radio City Music Hall. Crazy lineup. So
Congrats. Nice.
Yeah, good work there. In this episode, we'll answer the question, is Dope worth watching? And we'll give you 5 key takeaways to make you a smarter hip-hop movie fan.
Dope is a 2015 coming-of-age comedy drama which depicts the self-proclaimed geek, Malcolm, and his high school friends in Cali getting into a jam and embarking on a wild adventure after a bag of illegal drugs gets placed in his backpack. Dotted with a 90s hip-hop soundtrack, the beats and the action will have you jumping from Jump Street. Here are 5 things you need to know about Dope. This movie is a wild ride and may not be for the faint of heart. 2, the soundtrack is a goldmine of 90s hip-hop jams. 3, Shameik Moore is a charismatic leading man. 4, Rick Famuyiwa gifts us a tribute to hip-hop culture, as he did with Brown Sugar. And 5, there's a powerful social message about stereotyping based on socioeconomic status. All right, so this movie, as I mentioned, with the first takeaway, is a wild ride, may not be for the faint of heart. You want to expound upon that, Boogie?
Yeah, it's definitely a fun ride. And the crazy thing is, I forgot how much I liked this movie until I rewatched it for the podcast. But the main characters, Malcolm, Diggy, and Jib, they're so socially awkward in comparison to the other kids in their high school. Like, they have this really deep affinity for the 90s hip hop culture. Like, they dress like they're from the 90s. I mean, Malcolm even sports a flat top.
Yeah.
They listen to 90s hip hop all day. Like, they watch old reruns of Yo MTV Raps, etc. And they just don't fit in. But they have a deep rooted friendship, and they very much support one another. But they get caught in this weird circle of events after they receive a backpack full of some illegal drugs, and they're just tasked with trying to get those drugs out of their hands, or replace the money that's to make payment for those drugs, and it just sets them on a wild goose chase. And it's so it's such a series of unfortunate events, but like watching them unfold in the film it's so funny to watch. But yeah, if you have a if you get easily offended, you probably shouldn't watch it. But I definitely had a good time watching this one.
Kind of right. You want to add some additional commentary on the wild ride?
It got an R rating.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got an R rating for a reason. There's a lot of adult situations in this. For a coming-of-age film, they sort of got all the adult situations. They encountered every one of them. So, yeah, it's they grew up quick.
Oh, definitely.
With all the things you see in this movie.
It's when my brother-in-law told me about this movie, and he's like, "Oh, you'd like it." And when you just see the preview, you don't really you think, "Oh, these high school kids, and they like 90s hip hop music." And I thought it was just going to be like a fun ride, but it ends up being something crazy, like Stand By Me meets Pulp Fiction or something like that. It's just like, whoa,
yeah.
It's like gets out of control. So this geeky crew of the 3 like super smart high school seniors takes wild turns. And to get into some of the themes and maybe some of the stars as well, you have tied into hip hop. Dom, played by A$AP Rocky. I think one of the first jaw-dropping moments is like he just beats up the security guard at the club, and you're like, wow, where did that come from? And then there's the gun violence and assassination over drugs. They even make like a joke about one acquaintance or friend of them who got shot and killed at like a fast food joint, and while he was like finishing his Game Boy and stuff like that. I'm like, wow, this is like out of control. Yeah, it was wild. And drug use is a theme. Molly, the drug Molly. And there's the one girl they encounter, Lily, who likes to get naked. She got into the drugs and took them on a wild crusade. But
her brother, wanted to be gangbanger. Ends up having a shootout.
Yeah.
It's like, what? I mean, very serious topics were touched upon, but they make it so lighthearted in how it's portrayed in the film that it's just like laughable.
Yeah. A lot of crazy characters. And then speaking of like 90s themed hip hop movies, one of our favorites, Do the Right Thing, featured the character Smiley, and Roger Guinevere Smith is in this as AJ, Austin Jacoby. Yeah. And he has a unique way of talking very slowly and like in a creepy fashion. He was the one that was going to help him to get into Harvard because he somehow got to Harvard, but he was running a very shady business. So it was interesting to see him featured as well.
Yeah.
And then you had William, the stoner kid, who was funny because they needed an expert in how to handle illegal drugs and paraphernalia and how to get rid of it. And he was kind of a master of the dark arts, or like the dark web. And he was kind of funny. Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, so wild series of events. Just crazy. It's like, not to give you the whole plot, but like these odd things happen, and you're just like, what just happened? One after the other, after the other, after the other. Yep.
It starts with Malcolm, trying to convince his guidance counselor that he should write his Harvard essay about Ice Cube's good day. And then he has two no good, very bad couple of days.
That's true.
Yeah.
And then he recovers. I guess there's a happy ending. I don't know. I guess you could debate whether it's a happy ending or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that the guidance counselor was not really that supportive of him and didn't really support him. But I thought that was a cool concept to write about. Today is a good day. That's been analyzed before as to what day of the year that was, etc. Yep. There's been a lot said about that. Let's get into like the soundtrack. Our takeaway number 2 is the soundtrack is a gold mine of 90s hip hop jams. If nothing else, like what we believe is like the golden age of hip hop. I mean, it is just like hit after hit after hit.
Yeah.
Boogie, you want to take us through some of the brilliant songs that they put in here?
Yeah, I was jotting them down as they were coming across. Like, oh my god! So we start off with "Hip Hop Hooray" by Naughty by Nature, and it's in the beginning of the film as we first get a glance of Malcolm's room and how he's got hip hop posters and things all over the room. We have "Woo Ha!" Got you all in check by Busta Rhymes, and that song was I love the placement of that song. It's as Malcolm was running away from Bug, a.k.a. Marquise, and it said that they were trying to steal his pair of throwback Jordans that he had on. But as they were running through the hallways, that song was playing. This perfect placement. We have another one, "The Choice Is Yours" by Black Sheep, and that's when the trio were leaving school and was trying to figure out which way to go home, and they were just kind of trying to figure out should we go this way or that way. "Bugging Out" by Tribe Called Quest.
That was my favorite needle drop of all of them. That was the like perfect
Yeah.
The perfect
that's what I love
realization
about
when he realizes that what's in his backpack. Like that's the perfect song to
Yes.
describe that situation.
Yes.
like you said, it's the plate, not just so much that they had the songs, but the placement of them really fit.
That was my
Yeah.
favorite needle
Really
drop.
fit the action. Right, yeah.
Yeah. Then we have Know the Ledge, the Juice theme by Eric B. and Rakim. As Malcolm and the crew, they're getting chased by the guys in the red El Camino who are trying to confiscate the illegal drugs in the backpack. And that was cool too, because it was like a chase scene, so you got that hyper track going along with it. That was another. I love the placement of that as well. The World Is Yours by Nas. The crew finally gets away from the El Camino, and they're taking the backpack over to AJ's house. And as they're walking around through the house, and they're looking at how well AJ lives. Then we have this one was another funny one that I loved. The placement was the Scenario by Tribe Called Quest and the Leaders of the New School, as Lily is driving, trying to drive Malcolm to his interview, and at the same time you have Diggy and Jib. They're with Jalil at the Jimmy's Burgers trying to get some snacks. We have Rebirth of Slick, Cool Like That by the Diggable Planets, which was another cool placement where they're meeting the elusive William and Sherwood III, criminal mastermind. Rebel Without a Pause by Public Enemy, as Malcolm is running through the hallway trying to get his backpack, and elude the police who are doing a search through the hallways to see if they could, the dogs could smell any drugs in the building. And then like the end credit scene was perfect. The Humpty Dance by Digital Underground. And then we have, classic Shameik Moore, being Shameik Moore, doing all of the old school dances. Like another perfect placement. Like very, very deliberate with the songs and the placement of them. Well done.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. This may be my favorite soundtrack of all the movies we've covered, like from top to bottom.
There's a lot of detail in this, these selections, and the Humpty Dance. He does it. Famuyiwa does it to a Papa Video homage. So you remember that show from the '90s on MTV?
Oh yeah,
yes.
So if you rewatch that scene, the little pop-ups for the credits, really nice, really well done.
Yeah. When they played Rebel Without a Pause, I hadn't heard that in a while. And as we were watching it, we were preparing to go see Chuck D perform, do a interview and speech at Northampton Community College, and it really was perfect timing. And I was like, yes, the rhythm, the Rebel, I mean, it was so great. Yeah, and that repetitive, background from Terminator X. It worked so well. Brilliant. Just brilliant. Yeah. So, man, that soundtrack is unreal. So you want to get more to Shameik Moore. That was our next takeaway is Shameik Moore was charismatic as a leading man. I knew him. I don't know a lot of his work. I know him really mostly from playing Miles Morales in the Spider-Verse movies. He did an amazing job. You guys want to talk about how well Shameik Moore did as in the role of Malcolm?
Yeah, I think you get the perfect dichotomy of kid that wants to fit in, kid that wants to be cool, kid that's unaccepted, but super brilliant. You could tell he was because of the formulation of his essay for his final admissions essay and how he put that together. But yeah, you want to root for the kid. I mean, and he also has this. He's charismatic. He has this sort of innocence about him as well. And I mean, like I've seen him in some other things too. But yeah, this is probably the first role that I think I actually recognized him and remembered him from. I think the next rollout I think I remember him from is the Get Down. If you ever get a chance to check that out, I highly recommend it on Netflix. It's about the early stages of hip hop in the Bronx. It's very accurate. But unfortunately got canceled. But yeah, but he was good in his role. I really enjoyed him.
This is his first lead role, which is pretty great.
Yeah.
And he's written really well. Malcolm's written really well. There's a theme in this movie about whether he's just like the other guys that, in his peer group, and it turns out that he's different than them, but in some ways the same. And that was an interesting plot point that they hit on a couple of times. The movie starts with these three definitions for the word dope, and it sets a tone for this, his coming of age. But it was also like coming into his own identity, because he struggled with, he's black, but he's got a lot of white interests. Like, this is how good the character's written. His favorite band is the Thermals. The Thermals is an indie rock band from I think Portland. They're on the Sub Pop label, and like in the aughts, and like you really had to know your like indie rock to know that his favorite band was the Thermals, and he liked TV on the Radio. Another like happened to be like almost all black members, but like a white like indie rock band. So he got a lot to work with, and he really took it and really brought it to life. I could feel the contradictions within himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had three adjectives that I described the character of Malcolm with, like charming, intelligent, and relatable. So
Yes.
yeah, he was awesome. We could relate to him, and we're somewhat of nerds and into 90s hip hop culture. And, we try to keep a straight and narrow path. So yeah, you definitely can see, like, I think you used a great term, Boogie, the dichotomy is like wanting to fit in and have a little bit more like street cred, wanting to relate, but also, he had a path forward. He wanted to go to Ivy League school. And it's hard to navigate that world.
Yeah.
With both.
I found him very relatable. He grew up he was in Inglewood. I grew up in Newark. He wanted to go to college, and he wanted to go to college. He had to walk and navigate through the neighborhood to get to school. I had to navigate through the neighborhood to get to and from school. I saw some things, and he's seen some things. So yeah, very relatable. I mean, this was such a well written character.
Right. Takeaway number 4 was director Rick Famuyiwa gifts us a tribute to hip hop culture, just as he did with Brown Sugar, which was, I know, Boogie, that's one of your favorites of all time. Really interweaves the power of hip hop culture and coming of age into the plot line. You want to take us through a little bit about that?
Yeah, I could start off. I mean, the first thing obviously was the soundtrack. I mean, definitely, like it's all there. I mean, the layout of Malcolm's room, the appreciation for the culture, the way they dressed and spoke and everything like that. Even Malcolm and Dom's original conversation, and then they started talking about the 90s and hip hop, and how they were going back and forth debating on debating on hip hop from the 90s, and I was just like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is actually an interesting conversation right here. There's some other references throughout the movie, and also the old, like I mentioned earlier, the old school dances in the end credits. That was so cool to watch, because I remembered all of those dances, and I remember doing all of those dances at some point, which is kind of embarrassing. But but yeah, those a few that I grabbed out of it. Pretty sure you guys picked up on some other ones.
Yeah, Donna, right. You have a few more as well.
Yeah, so Rick Famuyiwa, he's like I know he's the director of this film, but he's like a producer of like a song producer. Like, he weaved in a lot of different little tidbits. Malcolm's room was, there was a lot of detail in his room, and all the other things. I felt like even though there was a lot of things happening, like in the plot of the story moving along, it all fit together really nicely. And it's hard to do. So I think like it felt like he had the beat, he had the melody, and he had the harmony, and he had like he made a film that was like very musical. That was not just the music itself, but like it had a flow to it. And I really enjoyed it. There was some criticism about some of the other characters, the side characters, not being so written as detailed, but I think it really worked to have the character of Malcolm be so, well written, and his friends were, relatable in their own way, and then like the side characters really made a good contrast with the main character. So,
Right.
Thumbs up for me.
Yeah, definitely. I saw it's almost like an education in 90s hip hop. If you take someone like from the younger generation today, like teenager, and you want to give them a quick lesson in 90s hip hop, like watch this movie because you see some of the fashion, you see the soundtrack, at least for the music. It does a great job with it. And as I mentioned before, it's a little bit of a nod to Do the Right Thing to have R.G. Smith in it, Roger Guenveur Smith. Same as you mentioned, I picked up on the dialogue about the golden age of hip hop with Malcolm and Dom. That was awesome. And they were saying, Malcolm was saying how he loved all these artists. And I think he mentioned like, it takes a nation of million to hold us back. And I think Dom was arguing, oh, that's from the 80s. That's actually from the late 80s. He's like, you get the point.
That was 88.
Yeah, it's 88. And then there was, and then I think Dom brings up like Vanilla Ice. He's like, all right, well, not all of the 90s, was legit,
Right.
but it was the golden age. There was also reference to a Tribe Called Quest's song "Suck a Nigga," which about the appropriate use of the N word, and they made a little joke about that and how slaps were happening, and that was kind of funny seeing how they danced around that, because it's always a hot topic. Is like, hey, how can they can use the word but we can't? Or like, hey, this guy's Latin, why can he use it but I can't? And that's always been like a controversial thing because, like, Fat Joe uses the word. It's like, hey, how does he have the right to use the word and stuff like that? So they like addressed that in a humorous way. Yeah, I mean, it's a goldmine of 90s hip hop culture and music. And then takeaway number 5 is there's a powerful social message in this movie about stereotyping based on socioeconomic status. We get that towards the end in the form of the essay, and it really makes you think. Donna, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. He pivots from doing analysis of Ice Cube's, Good Day. But I liked it in that he really put it out there. He was sort of challenging the Harvard admissions committee about who are you taking, who are you admitting to this institution, and he was as complicated as any other people in the film, but these complications serve to have him as like a worthy person to go to Harvard. So that was a really cool way he sort of ended the film with his personal statement.
Yeah.
Boogie, you have more on that as well?
Yeah, I think it was perfect. Gave 2 scenarios, one student, straight A's, awkward, doesn't really fit in, but seems an all around good student. Student B, unfortunately is not doing as well as student A, but due to circumstances beyond his control and dealing with his environment, he's dealing with life that he has to deal with it. And he's like, then you have me. He's like, who am I? Maybe I'm caught in between both of them, and he describes himself with all his credentials, like, he's a nearly perfect, SAT scores, plays in a punk band, has a list of, stellar extracurricular activities. He was a Google Science Fair participant. This was the funny one. And he helped an online business make $100,000.
Technically true.
Yeah, it is true. So it's like, he ends it, but I love the way he ends it though. It's like, so why do I want to attend Harvard? And he says, if I were white, would you even have to answer that question? He's like, so I mean, it was powerful and very relevant, even today. But I think it was good. I think it was spot on.
Yeah, it was unique how they handled that situation, because they were so brilliant with technology and science, and they're like, hey, we can sell things through the dark web and use cryptocurrency, and it's not really tracked by a traditional bank, and it was wild. But yeah, getting back to the point, describing the two students and the dichotomy between the two, and it's like, maybe I'm both, like which person are you looking to admit? It was powerful. It left you thinking, like, wow.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. Yeah, so, I mean, I think we covered all the takeaways there. You guys want to go around the room and give our rating for the movie? So,
Yes.
All right.
Bring that funky flick back.
Boogie, would you say bring this funky flick back or leave it in the vault?
Bring this funky flick back. Such a fun ride.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if I watch it again, I'm going to find some other things that I didn't notice.
Yep. Kind of right.
I'm also going to bring this funky flick back. It's so well crafted. I think I would find more things the second time around. Like any good song has these little things that you just don't notice right away, and then repeated listens will give you the goods.
Yeah, and I'm with you guys. Definitely bring this funky flick back. Soundtrack is amazing. Lots of action, lots of good dialogue. There's nothing to dislike about this. And I've already told some friends about it. Like, have you seen this? You have to see this. Like, I'm continuing to promote it. I told my son he's going to watch it. He's like, yeah, I'll have to watch it soon. I don't think he's got it around to it just yet. But bring it back.
All right. Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, Boogie, and Dino Wright. Theme music by Boogie. Whether you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button or follow. It gives us a power up for real. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in.
And remember, don't hate, graduate. It's graduation season
time.
As we record.
Yes.
Follow through.
It's that time. All right.
Bring it, come on.